Hi, folks. You're with Tacitus today. Tacitus today, your pushback channel. Thank you for joining this audio live stream. We may think that sort of mass immigration is particularly illegal immigration, being more to the point, or any form of large numbers of people being moved around the globe, is a modern phenomenon. When I say modern, something that's happened over the last 10 years or so. That's not right. If we go back to, and you've got to trawl through a lot of the speeches that are being made in the days of, even going back to like Jimmy Carter, President Jimmy Carter in the United States, and Reagan, and on through Clinton and Bush, Obama, and so on. And it's been an issue. They've all talked tough about we're gonna clamp down on this illegal immigration or mass immigration and so on. They didn't call it mass immigration at the time. We're going to clamp down it. We're going to stop it. Look, there's quite a lot of them in the country at the moment. Some of them have been here for quite some time, particularly around California in the farming sector and agricultural sector. So what we'll do, we'll just give them citizenship. But from now on, if even one of them pokes their nose across the border, they're going to get kicked out, and we're going to be tough, and we're not going to take any shit, and so on and so forth. We're going to enforce our laws and the like. Now, there are a few reasons the Democrat presidents were being pressured by, say, labor unions back in the day. So, look, all these illegals, they're undermining wages, they're undermining working conditions, they're undermining safety conditions, and so on and so forth. So you've got to stop these illegals coming in. And there was quite a bit of effort put in there. Even day labourers coming across the border from, say, around Tijuana and that border with the United States, even the day labourers coming in to do things like pick fruit and the likes, even they were being frowned upon back in the day. But I just wanted to highlight the numbers. So now these are assessments, so I don't know how exact they are. I would suggest not 100% exact, but they're indicative. And this is the numbers coming in. So if we look at the numbers that were in the 1980s, there's somewhere around 250,000 illegals coming in a year. Now they don't know how many, because there was a lot of coyote type gangs that were bringing illegals in, particularly to do agricultural work or things like cleaning and so. And even when I first went to the United States, I was surprised at the amount of lower level workers in the hotels. And I was staying at 4 or 5 star hotels, and so, or 4-star actually back then, because I was 3.5 in, because I was a junior, and they didn't. Being a junior and first doing international traveling, they treated me like shit there, and cattle class travel and all that sort of thing. But I was surprised at how many illiterate Spanish peasants there were. They looked like peasants, walked like peasants, hung their head like peasants, and they couldn't speak English, and some of them clearly had an IQ of 80. So they were the ones that were coming. So they were obviously, these aren't people who have the wherewithal to go, you know what, I think I'll go to the United States and improve my life. Even then you could tell this was an arranged people movement, people smuggling. Agitators and stirrers were going around to the rural peasant community saying, hey, I'll get you a job in the United States. That sort of thing. So it was clearly being done by corrupt gangs and people trafficking groups and so on, even back then. So there's around 250,000 each year were coming into the United States at that time. And in the political speeches, people standing for governor or for political office or the office of president, even, it was, they're having these debates and the primaries and all that sort of stuff. This was a pretty big theme that came, we're going to clamp down on this immigration, this mass immigration, illegal immigration. We're going to stop those Mexicans coming across the border and so on. So a lot of talk about that. So back in the day, about 250,000 a year. Now, a lot of that was kind of not illegal staying for a while. It wasn't an act of wickedness per se. It was illegal and should have been stopped and dealt with. But you get sort of day labourers. Maybe they've got a visa, to short-term work visa or something like that, and they come along. They do work on the farm, picking fruit, say, and then the farmer realised, gee, these people are really cheap, and like for any excuse, any reason, I can say, "Oh, I'm not going to pay you this week," or "But you can stay here and I'll give you free food." But so the farmer can look at, they need to dig an irrigation ditch, and so they go to a local contractor who brings in the digger and the mechanical equipment and the people who are paid American rates of pay, and realize it's going to, not just use straight out round numbers here to illustrate the point, it's going to cost him $100 to do that. But he's already got these Mexican laborers there, and he can get them to do it. And if they break any shovels or doing, he just say, "Oh, I'm not going to pay you. You didn't do a good enough job." And so he ends up, he can get that irrigation ditch dug. Now it'll take him longer. It's not as efficient and all this. So efficiency is out the window. But these Mexican laborers, he's got them holed up in some barn with holes in the wall and no proper sanitation or running water, so it's not costing him anything. He gives them some food they have to cook themselves and so on. And so they're very cheap laborers. And again, he pays them shit money or not at all. They get accommodation and food, so they're kind of, "Oh yeah, all right then, we'll accept that." And they can dig the irrigation ditch. Now the irrigation ditch can be dug in a day by the professional local contractor, or it's going to take 2 weeks for the Mexican laborers to, but you still get your irrigation ditch dug. You don't have it. It's not time dependent. You don't have to do it in the next 5 minutes. So they think, well, I'll keep these laborers on. They can mend my fences. They can do all sorts of jobs. And, and if you've ever been on a farm, there's always something to do, always. And they can plant the crops, pick them, dig the ditches, mend the fences, and so on and so forth. They can do all that sort of stuff, and they're cheap. So what I'll do is I'll just keep them on here. Sure, their work visas have expired. Maybe they're illegal. Who gives a shit? And they can do all that work. So these people end up staying on, where it may have initially been a seasonal thing where they were just coming to pick the fruit, but due to this sort of slippage, they end up staying. So it's 250,000 illegals were coming in a year, according to the political debaters and so on back in the 1980s. And again, I don't doubt it. I speak some Spanish, and I tell you what, in the hotels, you needed it. You had to ask them to make up the room, or I need some more towels, or this or that. And I had enough Spanish to be able to talk to them. And without that, you'd be screwed. Even the supervisors could barely speak English, and they were just there. I think they were more people trafficker, type employees or coordinators or that sort of thing. They didn't seem to really understand much about looking after hotels. So I noticed that in the pretty much all those hospitality type roles, similarly in a lot of the takeout food places, there were these people that barely spoke any English, and I was surprised by that. And it was a kitchen. There was this place in Texas I was at who did very nice Tex-Mex food, by the way. And I was just having a look at I came in late one day, and like after lunch, and most of the catering staff, the cooks and so on, were sitting down, and I noticed they were all looking very Mexican, very Hispanic, very South American, all talking Spanish, all very peasant looking. And that was the catering thing, and they were just sort of down in the corner there, and I was going in and getting some Tex-Mex stuff like hot guts, whatever it was. So by the time of, say, Bush, George W. Bush, that time, over the 8 years, it was estimated that just over 5 million illegals came into the United States from South America, and this was something that, say, Obama, as a case in point, was saying, "Hey, this is no good. Look at this, 5 million illegals coming in and making Americans' lives hard, reducing the standard of living of Americans." And he was listing Obama was listing all the things, all the problems that these people were causing. Now 5 million coming in over the 8 years, all illegal and all low wage, workers. That is sort of goalpost shifting. That number. And Obama and other aspirants for the office of president were were similarly denounced. He said it was not good enough. We got to fix it. Bill Clinton was talking about, hey, we're going to clamp down on this. So all this talk about clamping down and we're going to stop it, we're going to fix it, it just never ever happened. The numbers got bigger and bigger and kept on getting bigger until you get to the Biden administration, where there's approximately 3 million, depending on whose numbers you look at. I mean, the lowest estimate for the amount of illegals that came in during the Biden term, or auto pen term, Biden didn't know what day it was. The lowest estimate is 9.5 million. The highest estimate is 13 million. So somewhere in there is the amount of illegals that came in during those Biden years. Now that's a huge influx. But if you look at if you put it on a chart, on a graph, you can see that the numbers were just increasing all the time. Back in the 1960s, it was 100,000 a year, but in the then it was by the 1980s, it's 250. Then it was 300 or so by Clinton, 400,000 by Bush, and 500 by Obama. Then 3 million by, Trump. Trump's first term, he substantially reduced the illegals coming in, and really the Biden thing was to make up for, as the Democrat view or the globalist view is, while Trump was in it, we just had to sit it out. We just got to wait him out. We'll rig the election in 4 years' time, and then we'll just ramp up. So the 12 million, approximately 12 million illegals that came in during the Biden time, that really would have been 6 million if the Democrats had had their way. And if you look at 6 million, over the 4-year presidential term, 6 million illegals coming in, that actually keeps the trend line pretty much on the average, on the mean, on the mean there, if you plot it on. So, and that would represent in statistical terms that very prearranged, organized level of mass migration, illegal mass migration coming to the US. It was all condoned, fixed, rigged, backroom agreed, and so on. They only jumped up the numbers to that 3 million a year type level because they'd lost the 4 years of the Trump term. So they're just trying to make up, if you like, for lost time. But then, if we look at these numbers, then since say the Reagan years, and we extrapolate out those numbers over that time, that means that between sort of, if we like, say 1990 and 2016, so it's 26 years, there's approximately 480,000 were coming in on average per year, depending on 380,000 rather on average per year over that time. So 26 times that means there's well over 10 million or 12 million that came in during that time. Add on to the minimum amount of illegal. This doesn't include the illegals were already there before 1990. If you look at the minimum amount of illegals that would be in the country, there would at least be 26 million. Now, if you look at, President Trump has effectively stopped the illegals coming in. This is a good thing. Now, if you look at the deporting thing, that at a very minimum, if there's going to be a significant impact on the amount of illegals in the United States, the Trump team has to increase the deportations by somewhere around 400%. And the number of deportations occurring, whether it's self-deportation or whatever, it's just nowhere near the numbers necessary. And even with inducements such as, we'll give you a free trip back to where you come from and we'll give you a few $1,000, just not enough people are going with it. And most of the illegals think that they've got a very good chance of avoiding detection and deportation. So they're prepared to sit it out. And they're being told that by the agitators. Look, sit it out. Look, Trump will be gone in a few years and then everything will be fine. Don't worry. Just sit tight and we'll take care of it for you. Which is why, you've got those organised, paid-up mobs running around Minneapolis and elsewhere, creating all sorts of trouble and mayhem, up to and including the attempted murder of law enforcement officers. I mean, it's insane. But this is now I want to now touch on the thing, what caused this start of the mass immigration? Was it, shifting circumstances and conditions in the countries that are exporting their people. Well, you could argue that. You could say, well, Somalia was a failed state, so, but does that mean those people, those third world, people that don't even know what running water and electricity is, and IQ of 70, you'd say, well, that means they can come to the US? No, it doesn't mean that. Why should it mean that? Why don't they go to a neighboring country? And the UN sets up, refugee camps or food camps or something like that. They can be looked after there in situ around other people who are like them, who speak their language, who are from the same or similar culture or from Islamic culture and so on. Why wouldn't you keep them in that area? Why would you bring people like that to the first world? You wouldn't. I mean, no sane person would. Nor is it, well, we have to, we've got an obligation. No, you don't. Those people can be looked after in situ by UN camps with UN troops to protect them in the event there's, some sort of tribal conflicts going on. Now, there's other things, like you say, well, what about in Haiti where they had the earthquakes? Well, again, aggressively move in there, set up UN camps and food camps and UN protected zones where people can be given food and medical attention and clean water, all these sorts of things. Why not? And again, send in the troops to protect them. So in the event there's warlords and goons that are going to try and cause trouble. So all that can be done in situ. You don't have to bring them to the first world country. What are they going to offer? I mean, their skills in nuclear physics or rocket science. I mean, seriously. Again, you're looking at a place with an IQ of 75. What are you going to bring to the first world country? But I mean, in Venezuela, you could make an argument there, that there were a number of, but again, keep them in South America. So again, set up camps to look after those people in situ in the area, in adjacent countries like Colombia and so on, to do it there. I mean, you could argue that for the very skilled people in Venezuela, which was, had a much larger middle class than Haiti could ever even dream of, then could some of those people have applied for some fast track visa to the US or Western countries? They speak good English. They've got high levels of qualification and expertise. There could be, but there's not very many of them. There's maybe a couple of 100,000 tops that you'd want to move to the US or a first world country. They seem to be generous and say it's a million. But if they're highly skilled people who all speak English, then that maybe would be a benefit, probably would be a benefit to the US economy. So that is something to consider. But outside of that, no, set up your refugee camps there in situ and look after those people, the so-called refugees or those trying to escape the Maduro regime at the time. Look after them there. I think that's very important. So there wasn't really there was no, that I can tell, there was no deteriorating circumstance or conditions anywhere in the world that would have occasioned or caused a mass movement of people. There just wasn't one. Now you can put argue, well, they had flooding in this country, flooding. Well, that's going to happen all the time anyway. Whatever, every time any country there's an earthquake, they all have to suddenly move to the first world or to the US. That's bullshit. It's ridiculous. It's an absurd claim. Oh, they're refugees seeking. So no, they're not. No, they're not. The flood or the whatever and the earthquake. Okay, very unfortunate. But the place was already a basket case. It's not like they're in a first world country and something terrible happened. That's not what it's like. So really, we need to just sort of go to the ideology here. Ideologically, the decision was made by the World Economic Forum, by the globalist cabal, say, you know what, we're going to move all these peasants from these surplus population, basket case, shithole, failed state countries are going to move all those people, or many of them, straight into the West. Well, the people in the West, the white people, aren't going to like that. Not a problem. We'll just accuse them all of being Nazis and Hitler. Problem solved. That's how we'll deal with it. And that really is what happened. So there was no clamoring or there was no impetus, sudden impetus for all these millions to want to suddenly move to a first world country, or in this case, the US. It just was never there. Were these people, did agitators go around with it? Did the people traffic infrastructure suddenly become huge through the NGO network. Yes, that happened. And they were the ones people trafficking these peasants. That's what happened. There was never the demand for it. In the West, there was never the demand. The people were never asking for or clamoring for all these illiterate third world peasants. Not at all, not ever. It was always a people trafficking gig organised by the globalist cabal. And it was then, and it still is today. You've been with Tacitus today, your Pushback channel. Thank you for listening.